start by telling, oh, there's Jashawn. Oh, excellent. Hi, Jashawn. I don't see where he went. Oh, there he is. Okay. Hi, Jashawn. All right. Leslie, it is 6:02 and we'll call this meeting to order. And I want to begin this meeting by saying that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. And I also want to thank you all for the time that you spent reading the book and reading through the policy. We do have an agenda for this evening, and I will share my screen so that you can see it. There's one change in the agenda, and that's just simply that the place where it says schedule is actually going to be a part of our policy review. So the first thing that I'd like to be able to do is have people on the committee introduce themselves and tell the other committee members how you are connected to Seaside School District. So let's start with Jane Crater.
Hi, I'm Jane Crater, and I'm a school teacher, 6th grade language arts teacher at Seaside Middle School. And I also have a daughter who's a freshman and a daughter who's in 7th grade.
Thank you. I see Laura Stewart next.
Hi, I'm Laura Stewart. I work at Pacific Ridge Elementary as one of the librarians.
Thank you.
It's went through the school.
Thank you. Susan?
I'm Susan Bartline. I'm the junior English teacher and English department head at the high school, and I also have 2 children in our schools, 2nd and 4th grade.
Thank you. Daphne?
Hi, I am Daphne Mejia, former student of Seaside High School or Seaside School District. And then I also have students that go to Seaside School District and former employee of the Seaside School District.
Thank you. Let's see, I see Anthony next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Kachanas Runkle. I'm involved in the Seaside School District through my twin kiddos, both in 7th grade. I'm also on the middle school PTO board, and also I'm an active community member and partaker in a lot of the school events at all 3 different schools.
Thank you, Anthony. Susie?
Susie Winton, and I teach English language development at the elementary school and the middle school for newcomers.
Alex?
Yeah, I am Alex Carney. I'm the parent of 2 kids at Pacific Ridge Elementary School, community member for 9 years or so.
And finally, Jashawn.
My name is Jashawn Mills. I have no direct affiliation with the school. My son is a student there in Miss Christy Roberts' class, and I am a child advocate by self-proclamation.
Thank you. Again, I just want to thank you guys for your time. And now I didn't miss anybody, did I? Got everybody. Leslie, you're muted.
If anyone's wondering who I am, I'm Leslie Garvin. I help staff our public meetings, and I'm here to take notes tonight.
Thanks, Leslie. Honestly, our entire school district could not run without Leslie, so thank you. And behind the scenes, I should say that Kyle Duffy is running the tech side of things for the school district. So thank you to Kyle. You had a chance to go through the norms, but I just want to go through them again, make sure that we're all in agreement with them, and if we need to add anything, we can do that at this time. So listen actively without interrupting. Use I statements to express personal perspectives. Avoid personal attacks and inflammatory language. Focus on ideas, not individuals. Separate opinions from the person expressing them. Challenge viewpoints respectfully. Take turns speaking. Importantly, encourage quieter members to contribute. And equally importantly, give everyone a chance to be heard. We'll just do a, if you agree to those norms, go ahead and raise your hand. And if you have something that you want to add, go ahead and unmute yourself. It looks, Leslie, like everybody agrees. Okay, we can move on. So we're here tonight because there's been a challenge of instructional materials. Seaside School District does have a policy for both submitting a challenge and then once a challenge has been submitted, steps of how we resolve it or deal with it. So you've all been given the challenge of instructional materials. And I am going to take some time to walk through it. I think it's really important for our committee members, for our teachers, and for our public to understand that we do have a very thorough policy and we are following it exactly as we walk through this process. So the first couple of parts under number 1 are kind of already taken care of. An inquiry was made to an administrator regarding instructional material. The staff member was made aware of that. The administrator then arranged for the person making the inquiry to meet with the staff member. The administrator informed the person making the inquiry that if they're not satisfied, they may file a formal written challenge. And that is where we come in. A formal written challenge was submitted to the superintendent. Upon receipt of that written challenge, the superintendent shall, within 10 contact days, appoint the review committee and provide a copy of the written challenge to the staff members involved. So the challenge was provided to the staff member involved. The review committee shall consider the challenge within 10 contact days of the committee's appointment by the superintendent. And just so you know, the challenge forms were submitted after 5 o'clock on January 21st. The committee was appointed by the superintendent on or before January 29th. The committee members were given the book to read in its entirety and the policy. And so all of that was done well within the 10-day time frame. Now your job, I'm sorry, we're on D. The review committee, once appointed, shall recommend to the superintendent whether or not the challenge material should be withdrawn from use during the challenge process. That is a moot point because in that particular class, they've moved on to a different book. So we're going to skip that. Following a review of the challenge material, the review committee shall submit its report and recommendation to the superintendent for presentation to the board. So I kind of want to articulate that point. Your job as a committee will be to vote on a recommendation that you'll submit, that I will submit to Superintendent Penrod. And then Superintendent Penrod will in turn submit that recommendation to the board, to the school board. And we'll kind of go over that a little bit later. Once you've made your recommendation, copies of that recommendation will be given to the two individuals who submitted the challenge. The board shall announce its decision at the next board meeting following receipt of the committee's recommendation. If the board's decision is contrary to your recommendation, they will need to communicate their process of decision-making in writing to you, the review committee. The review committee shall be chaired by an administrator appointed by the superintendent and shall be a non-voting member of the committee. That's me. I will not be a voting member of your review committee. The committee chair shall be responsible for documenting all proceedings, for adherence to established procedures and guidelines, and for preparing and presenting the report recommendation to the board based on the minutes. So basically, Leslie's taking minutes as we speak. Those minutes will be put into my report, and I'll make a copy of my report available to all of you review committee members. So here are some procedures that we need to follow. We need to review the policy. We're doing that right now. We also need to establish a calendar. So I'm going to take a break in reading the policy right now to talk about the calendar. We have a meeting that we're attending right now. During that meeting, according to the agenda, we're really just going to be looking at the discussion. We won't make any final votes tonight. I propose that our next meeting be on Monday, February 10th, weather permitting, at the high school library at 6 o'clock. During that meeting, we will hear from the two people who who submitted the challenge. If the teacher would like to present during that meeting, that teacher may have a chance to do that. And we may want other people to present also, which we'll talk about later. But right now we're talking about the calendar, and I propose that our next meeting be on February 10th. So can I get a show of hands to see if that works for everybody? Okay, let me just scroll here a little bit. Great, thank you. Okay, Leslie, everybody agrees to our next meeting being on Monday, the 10th. All right, now we're kind of into the meat of the policy. You are going to have a discussion tonight. We're on C, 2C. Oh no, I'm sorry, we're on we're on 3C. 3C.
Helpful to share that on the screen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Dawn. Okay, so we are on right here, 3C. So your job tonight is to have a discussion, review the challenged material, considering the theme, concept, vocabulary, and in this case, illustrations as they apply to the appropriateness of the material for the instructional objectives established in the lesson in which it was used, including its presentation and follow-up, the appropriateness of the material's level of difficulty, and the appropriateness of the material for the age group with which it was used. So in a little while, we'll look at the syllabus again, we'll look at the standards again, and those will be kind of your guidepost as to the appropriateness of the instructional material. Are there any questions about that? Okay.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yes, Susan.
Sorry, as far as I guess it's technically the previous section, but on the complaint form, I'm sorry, the challenge form,
Yeah.
one of the parents said that they were not interested in attending the meeting. The other one did not check it.
Correct.
They
However,
still get to come if they said no, or is it just open to whoever?
when I contacted him later, he did say that he wanted to show up, so that's fine.
Okay,
And we'll actually go over those challenges in a little bit, okay?
got that. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, so now we're on B, request that the staff members involved submit a written explanation of their use of the challenge material. We have that in your packet, I believe. Actually, I lost my copy of that. But anyway, the staff member did in fact write a written explanation of their use of the challenge material, specifically addressing its relationship to the established curriculum and objectives. Then we talked already about the opportunity for the two people filing the challenge to be able to address this committee. That will happen on February 10th. I want to take a moment right now to ask the committee if on February 10th, they would like to hear from anybody else that I might be able to contact and invite to speak to you. Are there other teachers or community members or parents that this committee would like to be able to hear from? This is kind of a question for you guys, so you can feel free to unmute and answer.
Hi, Kate. I can't think of anyone at this exact moment, but if I do think of anybody, can I just email you?
I think because this is a public meeting, I need to be able to have it documented tonight. So
Okay.
how about this? If you think of somebody during the course of this discussion, we can circle back and I can add it to the agenda for next week.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Laura, Susan, Jane, any ideas?
I've got one person that I would like to be able to speak. He's
Okay.
actually a former student
Okay.
who, upon being assigned this, I spoke with, and I think would be beneficial to the committee and to the parents objecting to hear a alumni student who's taken that course, read that book, and did the assignment and found lots of value in it, and is surprised to hear, well, not surprised, but shocked that it's actually being considered taken off from the curriculum with how much him and his fellow students enjoyed the book.
Jason, who's that student?
Dakota Young,
Okay.
probably well known in the community.
Okay. we will, and do you think that he would be available then on that Monday?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, great. I will get a hold of him then.
I
Thank
can
you.
forward you his information as well.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Another thing that I'd like to establish right now, this is your decision, it's your review committee. Typically during a board meeting, we allow a 3-minute time frame for public comment. So I want to get an idea from you guys. I think it would be important to kind of have some bumpers on the conversation part or the presentation part of Monday night. So what do you guys have any feelings about, like, time, how much time you would want people to be able to speak?
I think 3 minutes sounds fine. I think that's enough.
3 minutes.
I agree.
Okay. All right, so we're all in agreement that 3 minutes is an adequate amount of time? Okay. Then I'm just gonna make a note here that we are 3 minutes of speaking opportunity. Okay, thank you. You guys are so good. Thank you so much. You're making this so easy for me. Okay, now we're into the area of 3F. And these are the 3 possible recommendations that you would be making on Monday night. Number 1, continued use of the material as used with no reservations. Number 2, restricted or modified use of the material in terms of subject area, grade level, etc. Or number 3, no further use of the material as part of the regular or support curriculum in the district. And let me kind of give you an idea what number 2 might look like. Number 2 might look like that book is still available in the library, or it might even be available as a personal reading material in that teacher's classroom, but might not be assigned. So those are kind of your 3 choices. Susan.
Would the still being allowed to be in the curriculum, not in the curriculum, but in the classroom, would that include like lit circles because it's a choice book versus?
Right, exactly.
Would that still, okay?
Yeah.
Because it's still being assigned, but they don't have to, okay.
Right. I mean, that is something that we need to articulate a little bit later on as well. Yeah, maybe I'll let you speak to that a little bit later, that but I don't want to do it quite yet.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Quick question.
Yes.
I probably should have asked this in part C, but just so I'm clear, this is a 9th grade English class.
Correct.
Okay.
English 9B. That is
Yep.
correct. Thank
Okay.
you for asking, Alex. That's important.
Thanks.
All right. There is now some information about procedures for voting. We are not going to vote tonight, so I might go over this section of the policy again on Monday night, if that's okay with you. And then again, you will make a recommendation to me. I will give it to the superintendent. The superintendent will give it to the board, and the board will make a final decision. And then the last part of the policy just says that this meeting is subject to public records and meeting law. Okay. All right. So here are the 2 challenge requests. These were in the packets that I gave you, so you most likely read them already. This individual says that her objection has references to masturbation, violence, alcoholism, profanity, drugs, and encouraging pornography. And the author has many sexual accusations against him. This challenge says that the harmful effects would be exposing young minds to sensitive material in an unsuitable and ill-equipped environment for it to be properly unpacked. Parents were not given an opt-out before the book was handed out. This challenge form asks, do you perceive any instructional value in the use of this item? And this individual says, absolutely not. This reading is a waste of time. Educators have an opportunity to mature our students and fill their minds with respect and make a difference and be called to higher standards. Importantly, this reviewer, this person did not read the entire book. They have read the first chapter and then found the book online to do a quick run through. Should the opinion of additional experts in the field be considered? I'm not sure if I understand if that's a no or a yes. This person would like other parents to be involved. That's you people who are on this committee. Thank you very much for being on the committee. This challenger believes that the material should be withdrawn from use and not have it be assigned reading material. In place of this item, this individual suggests maybe another book of equal or superior quality is A Tale of Two Cities, The Star That Always Stays, Res Ball, and many other great books. The second challenge states that the parent who submitted this objects to the sexually explicit portion of the book where the author references pleasuring himself. This parent feels that, in his opinion, it's unnecessary for my daughter to be exposed to this material when there is other non-sexually explicit material available that meets the same learning objectives. This parent does not perceive any instructional value in the use of the item. This parent did not review the entire item. He reviewed the section that his wife texted him that his daughter was uncomfortable reading. It referred to the author being sexually attracted to a cello and how good he was at masturbation. This parent feels that the other experts in the field should be considered. This parent would not like this book to be used with their student. This parent would like it to be withdrawn from use and send it back to the selector for evaluation. This parent says, I would suggest using curriculum that is free of sexually explicit material. If you wouldn't be comfortable with a teacher saying it to a student, don't require it to be read by students. Are there any questions about the two challenge forms? Now, remember that your discussion tonight is going to be focused on the appropriateness of the material as it relates to the instructional objectives, the material's level of difficulty, and the appropriateness of the material for the age group. So Alex, thank you for articulating that this is English 9B. It's a freshman English class. And I want you to, let's see, I think I'll try to make this bigger. Ooh, that's a little too big. Sorry, guys. Okay, so this book in the class is related to the following standards. There are 2 reading and literature standards, a literature, or is that a speaking standard, Susan? L1?
No,
And
L will be language, SL is speaking, listening. Yeah.
okay, and then 2 writing standards. So analyze what the text says explicitly as well as inferentially, determine a theme or central idea of a text, demonstrate command of conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing or speaking, demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English, develop the topic with well-chosen, relevant, and sufficient facts, extended definitions, concrete details, quotations, or other information and examples. Produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are relevant to task, purpose, and audience, and respond thoughtfully to diverse perspectives, summarize points of agreement and disagreement, and when warranted, qualify or justify their own views and understanding, and make new connections in light of the evidence and reasoning presented. Are there any questions on the standards to which this book was assigned? Okay.
Sorry, quick thing.
Yes, please.
I just want to point out that these are the standards, these are the target standards that are on the syllabus, but our curriculum maps in our department, 612, cover more standards than this. So these are the target standards that we want to make sure that 9B explicitly teaches and assesses. But there are additional standards that this book also fits into, that because the English standards tend to double up 9th and 10th grade, have a set, and then 11th and 12th grade have a more complex set of the same standards essentially. So just so people can understand that these are the ones she selected for the class overall. But I think there's other state standards that also she hits as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. If any of you parents on the review committee are interested in looking up standards, let me know. I can give you a link. ODE has all of our standards published. Our all of our coursework follows the standards that we are required to teach by the state of Oregon. All right, let's see. This, so you have had a chance to review the syllabus. And then I also included in your packets a couple of the assignments that I'm sorry, I'm not going to fuss around trying to make this straight for you, but this was a one-off assignment, and you can see that they're just answering some questions that they were prompted to ask or to answer. And this was the same assignment, different student. And then this was only a portion of the final for this book. And I just only shared half of the assignment. They also had to answer an essay question on the back. So did everybody have a chance to kind of look at those assignments?
Yes.
Okay. Jane, you did too? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So I think without further ado, keeping in mind the discussion that you are about to have is based basically on the appropriateness of the material in terms of instructional objectives, level of difficulty and the appropriateness of the material. I'm not sure whether or not you guys want to like each have a turn, or if you want to have a more organic discussion. I guess we could start by having everybody take a turn. Anthony, do you want to go first?
Well, I was gonna just say that I'm open to a more organic conversation, and if you kind of help guide between the three different objectives.
Okay,
Um,
that sounds great to me. I'm gonna stop sharing so that we can see each other a little bit better. Okay. If nobody goes first, I'm just gonna jump right out there and invite somebody to start. Susan, do you want to start for us?
Hey, Kate, I'm sorry if I can, this is Leslie, just a brief interruption. On your agenda was an attestation about reading the book.
Oh,
Please.
I am so sorry. I did forget that. Thank you. See, I told you, Leslie keeps our school district running. I was going to, when we were going to meet in person, I was going to have you all sign an affidavit. It looks something just like this, but if we could all go around and verbally state, I have read the book and the policy in its entirety. We'll start with Susan.
I read the book and the policy in its entirety.
Thank you. Jane?
I have read the book and the policy in its entirety.
Thank you. Laura?
I've read the book and it's the policy in its entirety.
Thank you. Daphne?
I have read the book and its policies in its entirety.
Thank you. Alex?
I read the book and its policies in their entirety.
Thank you. Anthony?
I've read the book and the policies in its entirety.
Thank you. Susie?
I have read the book and the policy in its entirety.
Thank you. Jason?
I have read and enjoyed the book and read all of the policies in its entirety.
Thank you. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Leslie, for picking up on that. Susan, do you mind starting off this discussion tonight?
I'm happy to start. I don't know if Jane wants to start though, since she has to run and grab.
Oh yeah, why don't you start, Jane? But as long as you're able
I can go
to
if you don't want to go first.
continue listening.
Yeah, I will be listening
Okay.
the whole time because sorry if I'm echoey because I have my phone on so I can step out for a minute. So I have read the book and I feel the appropriateness for the age group is spot on because the reading complexity is actually lower than what's needed for freshmen, which gives a lot of room for developing the themes and other things that are within the book, which I do as a teacher. I take the reading level down so we can have bigger discussions. So as far as that part, that's where I am with that. And let's see. So, and then objectives, objectives are objectives and every book kind of can meet all of them. It just depends on how it's used.
Do you have any comments on the assignments or the final?
I feel that the assignments were well done, obviously examples of kids who really thought about what they were writing. And the final looks like a standard final that we give for most books. As a teacher, I can say, like you have different things and that the essay part was probably the most important section of it for developing those themes. So, but the rest just looks kind of standard. I was impressed with the work that the students did.
I will say that there was another assignment as well. And it was an essay. And I read a couple of them. They were great. I just grabbed a couple, just some samples of what the kids were doing, but they were doing quite a bit more than what you saw.
I would hazard a guess that some of those essays might have some personal information because a lot of it was about what culture are you from and that kind of stuff. And so essays are where kids kind of pour their heart out sometimes. And so it's probably good you didn't make copies of that just because it might have been a, more of a confidential thing of kids sharing their personal stuff.
Mhm. I believe that the prompt was, like describe your tribe, describe who you think that you belong to. And I think that there may have been discussion about different kinds of ways that we belong. Jane, what about the oh, never mind. I think you answered all three.
I
Anybody?
I think I did. And like if we're just focusing on those three things, those three that we're talking about, that's what I have to say, because I know that some things that are brought up or challenged are things that are brought up in a lot of books, and teachers tend to know what they are before they come up and address them in class. So I guess that's my question, is how might it have been addressed, some of the language that's used within the book? And those are my thoughts.
Mhm.
If I can add to that, you kind of touched on the delivery method there. I don't know how it's delivered and how it's the whole process of going about this particular lesson would look. So I'm imagining there's some in-class reading of the book, some take home for the students. So my question with that is, in the in-class reading of the book, is there any type of pre-discussion of what will be found, and how we should, maybe guidance like towards the students, how we should react to some of the things we hear and some of the things that we read within the book? What does that look like in the class setting?
Can I defer to Susan for that?
Not trying to be a conversation hog here, but having been in the classroom when that book's going on, just handing things to the teacher, things like that, I'm across the hall. So and I taught it as well. When I worked in Salem at McKay High School, I used to teach it to a 9th to 12th grade remedial reading class. And so I have taught it, but it's been about 15 years since I taught it. So I reread it. But generally, our policy, kind of our unofficial policy as a department is we do a lot of reading out loud for the non-honors level because kids won't do reading at home. It doesn't happen. Maybe a third of them will, and those that do might struggle and they won't fully get it. The nice thing with this book is it is a lower Lexile level, so those that read on their own or miss class can catch up pretty easily without too much struggle. But I believe she reads probably 85% of it out loud in class so that they can pause and have those discussions. We don't say the slurs out loud, like we don't read those words, we don't read the N word, we don't read the FA word that's in there. Or the R word, we don't read those out loud. And there's a discussion about the use of those words and those aren't appropriate words. And the way that Junior mostly uses them are self-deprecating. He's not calling other people those names. They're usually being called at him. And so it's his reaction to being called those things. And so I do know that, so there's some of the books I teach, we don't further that hate by saying those words out loud in class. So we'll just skip the word, or I mean, we'll tell the students why ahead of time, right? That this is hate speech, this is a slur. We don't say these kinds of things. And so with the material that the parents objected to, specifically the alcohol use and the self-pleasuring mention, was probably read aloud, but it was just part of the chapter. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't stick more on the dog getting shot. So that's a bigger impact for the kids of, what do you mean they had to shoot the dog? I think that's a bigger reaction from the class versus a teenager saying he does teenager things. So.
Yeah, Kate, I had a follow-up question for Susan, just since you are the go-to. I wanted to see with in reference to slurs and different things like that, when you're discussing that about the context, do you kind of also just talk about the timeline of when the book takes place? It bounces between the mid 90s and early 2000s, kind of like just as Junior's going around and kind of in his diary, just kind of saying that context wise, these words were used more commonly. They're just not used as commonly now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, usually
Okay.
when we come across specifically the slur for African Americans, it is in older texts, right? And so we have to have the conversation about historical context and that, and so we still say them, but like, that she's going to start To Kill a Mockingbird next, and obviously the N-word is in there. And so that's a whole discussion before they even open the book. So as far as the time frame, the 90s, we were all there, I mean, unfortunately we know those words were used, and it's not appropriate now. And she definitely has that discussion with them, because sometimes the kids still say those words and we have to call them out. Not as much as it used to be in the 90s for sure, but we still hear them occasionally, and have to put a stop to that immediately with that kind of hateful words. Did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
I missed the whole answer. Sorry about that. My screen went
We
black.
address it. We address the time period of the context, but also that it's still not appropriate then reading it as now, right? So, but we also just, I will say we also discussed, right, in our classes in the high school level, that we can't just rewrite history and change out the words, right? We can't get the addition of Huck Finn where they changed the N-word to slave for Jim because he wasn't a slave. He'd escaped from slavery. So, we do have, with the older grades especially, we have those discussions, but she definitely brings it up before she teaches Mockingbird, about, using accurate language and also how hate speech fits into that. Would they have said that at the time? Absolutely. Is it appropriate? Absolutely not. So I do think with it being focused on indigenous tribes in the book, and the freshman teacher, she
Uh-oh.
I think Susan froze.
Susan, you're frozen. She's frozen. I'm very glad that Susan brought all of this up, because I reread To Kill a Mockingbird, because that's the next book that they're going to be reading. And there was language that is pretty troubling, to read in this, in our era. But like Susan said, you can't go back and unwrite history. So thank you,
Well,
Susan.
I personally don't think it's a matter of rewriting history. Those words are used today in derogatory fashion, and a lot of the lessons this book teaches, especially the fact that it's about a tribal student. We're surrounded in Seaside by a lot of tribes that are native to the area. I see tribal IDs daily with what I do around town. So I can't see a better fitting book for the Seaside School District than this book as it is. It touches on the tribal aspect. It touches on the inflammatory language of using racial slurs like the N-word, and the contents of what he was fighting for and his different fights he had within school. Touching on the masturbation. By that age that they're reading this, that's not new to them. As parents, we can't lie to ourselves. They're doing these jokes. They're hearing this stuff in locker rooms way before this age that they're reading this book. We're not supposed, well, I say we, you're not, as educators, those that are presenting this book, are not supposed to tiptoe around subjects. A book like this that has the strong words that gets the attention makes students want to see what's in the next chapter. It engages them. And as educators, it's your job to captivate and capture the minds of these students. As parents, we have to allow you to do that, and we have to be available and willing to have that conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. We need to have that conversation at home to reinforce the inspiration that you guys are sparking, putting these books like that in front of these kids. So I think the language is appropriate. I think the theme is quite fitting for this area. Within 100 miles, we got 3 different tribes. So I mean, that's my thought on it, and that's why I wanted to know how the delivery was in class. Is there preference of these are words we're going to hear, think about it. It's not funny, it's not jokes, but give it some thought. And as we get to these pages, remember that we had this conversation and the way you should carry and think about it. And from looking at these assignments, these kids are getting it. They understand it. It's not the language. It's not the foul words. It's not the fighting. It's not the masturbation. They're seeing past that, and they're getting real. They're giving real insight in like what they're reporting back, and nothing that they're reporting back has anything to do with the language or the sexuality that's spoken about. So I think the delivery method of it and the particular book itself is being used in an appropriate place and in an appropriate town based off from our geographic location. That's it.
Thanks, Jason.
I would have to agree, if I can say next, with the book being based off of what Spokane, Washington, like what, as I think my kids, when they read it, they're like, this book was like close by, like it's just across up north, and they, when they engage in something that is so close to home to them, and I think it's really great that teachers at least help guide students to like the real world that that everyone goes through, whether it's, you know, poverty and difficulties in a reservation and having to struggle, and then having to be switched to a whole new school and see a whole different life in that area, and going through like tragedies with losing family members and their pets, and then losing friendships and gaining new friendships, and like it's all within, I think, my kids, like they're 15, they're 16, they're, you know, they're growing, and I think it's a great book for sure. And it's, even for me, like I was crying towards the end, like in tears when grandma passed away, when he gets to the um, message from his teacher saying that his sister passed away. Like everyone, I think, just what, 2 years ago when the community had that horrible, tragic accident with a student that went there. I mean, a lot of people grieved, and it was hard. And I think these are lessons that it's hard, I think, as parents to just randomly sit down with your kids and talk to them, but it's nice to know that teachers and schools are being somewhat touching that bait, like touching those areas of conversations, because it's hard, I think, as a parent to sit down with your parent, with your student, and say, your child, and say, hey, this is kind of what happens in life, you know. It's not just, it's it's not just, you know, it happens to other people, it can happen to anyone, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's a really good book, and I think it's, you guys are doing a great job.
I would like to add on to what Daphne just said. You know, reading the book, it's a really great book. I was able to read it in an afternoon. You know, I can see where they're saying it's the reading is maybe not what some would like it to be as far as like up to certain standards, but it does have a lot of big themes in there that also make it easier for readers, especially young readers, to really get a concept of what's being painted. And I think the author, Sherman Alexie, did a wonderful job using his own personal experiences and modernizing it to make it a readable and understandable, because it came out in 2007. And just the way he wrote, the way he talked about different situations, it wasn't it I felt like I was actually really with him. Every time he cried, I was tearing up. Every time he expressed, a hurt from a slur or being picked on or bullied, it's one of those things I think also people need to understand too. There's a lot of uh, personalization, humanizing his experience as well. I think many of us have experienced some sort of difficulty or um, persecution, and I think that it's important that it's sticking with the theme, which this book is a part of, is walking a mile in another person's shoes. So you're getting the experience of what someone that is native and what they're experiencing. You're getting the experience of someone that's being bullied and picked on because of their physical disabilities. You're also getting just the human experience of how, like, it can be really hard. And as we all know and remember, sometimes high school has lots of fun memories and also not so fun memories. And I think he was able in this book to really talk about his freshman year in a beautiful way that really hooked you, got you really rooting for him, being there for him. And I really appreciated that he was able to really show what it's like for his experience being on the res, and how he had to walk to school, you know, what it was like to literally see his ex-best friend at the time in the book all sad that they lost the basketball game, and he knew, being a part of that community, that most of them didn't have food. Most of them went home to abusive parents or dangerous situations. So it really just brought a huge world perspective, really finite to the tip of a pencil, if you will, to really just focus in on how complex Junior's life is and how he was trying to balance it and to feel he could never make anyone happy no matter what he was doing. I think that's something that all readers can relate to. And then as far as anything that's relating to what any young man is experiencing with his body and everything else like that, that happens. It happens all the time. So I think he did it wonderfully, and I think he made it so that he was poking fun at himself and calling himself out, but also acknowledging that sometimes you just things happen and you have no control.
I felt like this book had a real message of hope as well, because he not only, I mean, he just kept overcoming things from the beginning. I mean, his birth and all of his disability and his size. And then you add that to everything we've already talked about, and yet he still had a sense of humor. He still carried on. He was perseverant. He was curious. I just thought he was a pretty authentic, noble character. And that would be something that, because it was written, it just felt like you were reading his journal. So it was very believable in the voice that he used. And I think kids would really relate to that.
I can add one more point to that. If you were to, if I were to receive a text message that directed me to one single portion of this book that might talk about the sexually explicit stuff or the N-word joke, if that's all I saw, I might have a issue with, like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? But I think it's interesting that every one of us who read the book here, if you look at the context before these statements and after, it paints the picture, and it's not so shocking. It's not a slap in the face. The N word is a tough one for me to hear. And I kind of asked that question because I also wonder how difficult is that for the teacher to read in class. But without having the clear understanding of what comes before those paragraphs and what comes after those paragraphs, I would like for those who submitted these requests to have it removed to give the book a try, and then let's have another talk about if you still feel the same way about those sections, knowing the full context of it, because I think that makes a big difference. To see a little bit of a story is one thing, to see the big picture and understand brings a lot of the concerns in my mind to ease.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Especially because yes, there are some profanity in the book, and it is tough to be like, geez, my kids are reading this. But if you really look at it, like, they have their phones with them all the time, and I'm sure they hear way worse on their phones, on their internet, with their kids, with their friends, just down the hall during lunch. Like, I know my kids are not angels. I am sure that they have said a few things behind my back or when I'm not there. But it also kind of opens parents' eyes to be like, hey, you know what? This is happening. Like, maybe we should have a family chat and say, hey, these words are used. Like, how do you feel about it? Let's have a discussion. Like, you shouldn't use these words, or when you use certain words like this, make sure it's used appropriately, if there even is a way to use, obviously not the N word or the F word, but like, um, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you were to hear the way Jim is referred to in like a Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn type book, if you were to hear the way he's referred to without knowing the relationship of the kid and Jim, you may think it's derogatory, but it's a term of endearment in that situation. So it's context is everything. It's everything when you're talking about words and the topics we're talking about.
I'd love to hear from Alex or Susie. I know Susie.
Sure.
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. I felt like it met and exceeded the instructional objectives, the appropriate level of difficulty, met and exceeded the age group for which it was used. So as far as those three checks, I give us a strong endorsement of the book. I found it to be a very powerful book. I found some of the responses from the students in the study of the book to also be quite powerful. It, this one quote, it's written in a way that makes it easy for us to comprehend heavy topics. And I feel like that really sums up my feeling of the book, because it was a strong, strong book, but I read it in a day and a half, pretty easily. It was dynamic. It presented a lot of duality of life, and you can be one thing and another thing and all the things kind of together. And then it left us, I think perhaps most importantly, with like a message of healing and hope. So I think it was an amazing book. And I would echo Jay Sean's comment. I would certainly encourage the people challenging it to read it, as I think it might bring a different lens to some snippets, of the book, because it's strong. It's a powerful book, and it contains a lot of strong language and concepts. And when not taken as a whole, I feel, could be a bit jarring probably to a person, but it needs to be considered as a work, not a 5-page chapter. So.
Yeah, I agree. Some of those topics, I think for me, I'm like, ooh, a freshman reading this, I kind of, I can understand the parents questioning the appropriateness for students at that age, but I think like Jayshawn and Alex both said, within the whole context of the book, those pieces do not stand out like if you just were to see them as like, this was in this book that my freshman child is reading. I can understand the concern, but when you see it in the context of the whole book and the ways that students can relate to the book and had such a powerful novel, and like what somebody had mentioned, the idea of the theme of walk a mile in someone's shoes, you certainly do get into Junior's state of mind and the experiences he's having and relating to what that would be like to go through those things and how students can connect their own experiences to that. So I think, in the context of the whole book, they are not as concerning as it would be in isolation.
To add on to what Susie said, I will point out, that those sections were obviously not why we chose the book to teach. I will take responsibility in that the reason we're still teaching it is my fault. But when I came to Seaside in 2012, we just started teaching it. Mr. Mizell had started teaching it with freshmen, and when he retired, I said, hey, let's keep using this text. It's been really successful with engagement, and I was teaching sophomores and then juniors, but that's the book that kids tell me they still like. Like they read Lord of the Flies as sophomores, and it's a fun time. Like, okay, kids on an island, but fun. Sorry, that's on the record of me saying that. But it's not fun, but it's interesting because there's a lot of conflict. But they don't remember that one, right? That's not where they have the memories of like, oh, I really got that. I really felt like they related to me. That's more of like hey, that's a window. Let's look at a different experience. It's not really the mirror looking back at ourselves and who we are and our identity and where we want to be. And so that being said, I do want to point out that we've always offered alternative texts for kids that asked or for parents that emailed and asked. We've never said, no, you have to read this book. We don't tend to offer it straight up because what usually happens is the kid says, yes, I want to read a different book. And then they miss out on most of the class discussions and they don't actually read it because they're not with the class. Probably of the books I've assigned in about 20 years as an alternative, maybe 2 or 3 have read it out of like 12 to 15. And we can tell, right? So, I mean, I'm not even looking at the summary, like really just not even reading the book, just taking it as an opt-out opportunity. And so, we're not here to make students uncomfortable. We're not here to try and uncomfortable with biases, maybe uncomfortable with, preconceived notions about other people and how they're different, but not making them uncomfortable with sexual content, and one of the things with this book, content wise for the age appropriateness, I don't know that we would teach this at 7th grade like a lot of people do, but we felt like 9th grade was, a lot of maturity happens between 8th and 9th grade. There's another jump after 9th grade, but this thing about this book is that it's a way to see this culture. And again, like you guys were saying, the local tribes, there's no sexual assault in this book. There's no glorifying alcohol. Alcohol is seen as a very cautionary tale in this book. And then, all the things that happen to Junior, he's not condoning them in any way. So I think content wise, like that's a big thing for us, is this is like, Junior is a kid in a tough position, and he's making the best of it and trying to make his life better in every way he can within his limited agency. And so I think the kids really get that. And even the students that we have that are from a place of more privilege, I think can see this through Junior, and they can, put themselves in someone else's shoes. And then the kids who are in those shoes already feel seen, because we have a lot of kids that don't eat a meal except at school, or kids who have to walk to school, maybe not 22 miles, but still, I don't want to walk up that hill. And so I think a lot of the alternatives being suggested actually glorify the violence and sex or assault a lot more because they're about teenagers. And like the Res Ball book, for example, is about a basketball team and they're all going to parties and doing alcohol and drugs and stuff after their parties, and it's not something I would teach. So that's kind of just kind of a rationale a little bit why this book. So I just wanted to kind of share that. So
One of the points in the policies to discuss the book, but also its illustrations, and I was wondering if anybody wanted to comment on the illustrations and how they may have either enhanced or detracted or whatever your feelings were about the illustrations that were in the book.
I'd like to go first.
Oh,
All right,
go.
you can go ahead.
No, no, it's fine.
Okay.
No, I
Go ahead.
Sorry, I get excited about this because I audiobooked it on my Spotify, so I was listening for this whole week, this book. And when I got the book, thank you, Kate, I looked through, I'm like, that's not how I would be drawing this, but that's pretty cool. Not because it was explicit or anything like that at all, but I think kids, I think that they did a really great job with like how it just kind of gives snippets of like, this is what this chapter is about. And when he talks about, where was it, there was one where I think it was him describing himself, and in my mind, listening to the audiobook, I was like, oh right, like this little stick figure with big hands and big feet. And then I go to it, and I got to it in the book here, and I'm like, oh my God, that's not how I pictured it. So I think it's really cute. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say something similar, Daphne. I thought the illustrations used in the book track for who Junior is. He's an artist, he's a cartoonist. So it makes sense that he's using that as a medium to express himself. And I think that's an encouraging way to show other adolescents, young adults, like there's other ways you can express yourself that are in safe and healthy ways. If there was anything vulgar or violent, if you will, it was relating to how he was expressing his feelings and what he was experiencing, trying to understand how his dad's best friend Eugene, how he got shot, trying to understand how that whole conversation could have happened, and I think that also speaks to who the character of Junior is. He is in your face, but also at the same time, he's very sensitive and very reserved. So I think the illustrations were fine.
I think the illustrations were excellent. I mean, Grandma's got on shell toe Adidas shoes. I mean, it's just great. What student do you have that isn't doodling when they're writing and they're in class? This is what makes it feel like one of their fellow students wrote this, because they're looking at it. This is what they're doing. This is what they know their friends are doing. Their friends all have a notebook with these silly doodles and grandma and stuff like that with their lessons. So, I mean, I think the images even bring it home that much more and makes it feel that much more safe, because there is that illustration there that's fun, that those 8th graders and 9th graders are already seeing their friends doing, as far as the drawing and doodling and explaining their stories and their days, or something that happened at lunchtime with a doodle. I think it's fantastic.
I agree. Or go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex.
It added, I think, so much to the book. The illustrations, it just like further brought you in to this world, I think, in a deeper way. And the fact that they were kind of not all the time, and just the way they spaced them out sort of throughout, I thought was really powerful. And the interview with the artist was also really interesting at the end, and sort of talking about how they came up with this. And I think that this could be I felt a foundation for just a lot of creative ideas and output. Like you can't read this book and not leave thinking just creatively about how to tell a story, you know. Yeah, they were great. It was interesting because I didn't even really think about them that much. Like I noticed them, obviously I was reading, but then when you asked the question, and looking back through them a little bit, it was really a great addition to the book, I thought, and added a lot.
I'm glad you brought up the interview. I really liked that. I didn't ever notice that the first, or it wasn't in the earlier editions maybe, but the interview with the artist was really cool. Because yeah, there are always kids, drawing wolves on their test or drawing people on an iPad with like a art program that is amazing that I could never do. And so I think that's a cool like inspiration of like, hey, there's people that do this for a living, and just the way they discuss like that cooperative storytelling that they kind of did together that Sherman and the Ellen Forney did together. I thought was really cool.
Yeah. So as I was reading this book, all I had in my head was this is a high school version of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Because that's what my students like in middle school. They want to reread the things that they know, and I could see a lot of kids rereading this book. Like it's going to engage those learners that are really reluctant. And it's really going to be impactful to say, like, look, you remember this from when you were younger, like it's just a little bit more. And grab those kids that are like, I don't want to read a book. Like, look, it has some illustrations, just like the ones you used to read. So I think it's just one more tool, one more stepping stone. And when you have those kids that kind of wander when they read, sometimes I have a hard time focusing. If the words aren't engaging me, they go to those pictures. There's so much subcontext in the pictures themselves with, like you said, grandma's shell-toed Adidas. And also, I love that when he's describing himself versus one of the students from Reardon, like his outfit, his Kmart this and his this versus, the $500 outfit for the Reardon student. All those little details kind of just made the story better and made it seem more like a journal. Like that was the journal aspect of it. Because who's not going to have pictures in their journal?
I will say I do only have one negative thing about the book, and that would be that I want more. I want more of what happens to Junior in his story, because the way it ends, it's almost like, I hate to relate it to it, but it's like a really good like Netflix show, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to binge watch season 2. So I guess that's the only negative I can really think about the book, is that it was written so well and that it makes you want to kind of continue to follow up with Junior and see where he's at now. Did he go to college? Did he become a cartoonist? Did he, make the NBA? What happened? What about Rowdy? What is he doing? You know, all that. All the characters in the book were just phenomenal.
I'm doing that weight thing, I don't want to, I was just thinking that how cool would it be to just like have a parent book club, like where we all just sit around and read our kids' books and then talk about them.
I'll send you some homework, Kate. Send a couple down to the DO.
Yeah.
Do you want to discuss the other things on the parent letters or just the objectives for the meeting?
Yes, we can. Well, yeah, I mean, their objections were about the sexually explicit language. And then, which I feel like you guys have discussed basically, and then the other, Hillary was also objecting to the author having had sexual accusations against him. So it was sort of both the sexually explicit language and then also and the violence and the alcoholism. But I kind of feel like you guys have addressed all of those issues, unless you have more. Does anybody have more to add specifically as a response to the challenge requests?
I was just gonna add, regarding the author, Sherman Alexi's, accusations. I just kind of wanted to not leave that as an elephant in the room situation. It is addressed, you know, a lot of, unfortunately, you know, a lot of authors, artists, have skeletons in their closet, or at least accused skeletons in their closet. And so, you know, I mean, especially the older ones. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe, you know, marrying his 13-year-old cousin while he's first cousin while he's 27. Don't love that, right? But we don't talk about that. So I mean, we address those things in class along with the other discussions of just like, hey, we got to separate the art from the artist, or we wouldn't have any art left. Don't condone anything that he did. If he did do it, he wasn't found guilty necessarily, but obviously we want to believe victims. And you know, so there is a brief discussion about that. And the comment where he said the thing about the cello was part of a PBS documentary interview with him. So that's where that came from. It wasn't just him saying that he
I was going to
wanted.
say, I don't remember reading anything about a cello in the book.
No.
I didn't remember that either.
I haven't seen the full documentary, but it's from PBS, and it's part of the like setting him up for the context of the book. And I believe he says something about, and I'm absolutely not quoting it correctly, but he says something to the effect of, when I was younger, I saw the curves of a cello and they reminded me of the curves of a woman, and I thought that was sexy, was the line.
Is this
With additional
PBS
context around it.
is this PBS special in reference to like some of the material that's shown in the class? So to be like as an alternative source as well, because part of the syllabus said that it not only is the book read, but also like news articles and other things are added
It would
to.
be supplemental material, like when we
Okay, thank
show,
you.
you know, things about slavery for context for, you know, Huck Finn or whatever, you know, just giving that kind of historical context of, because it's
I think
semi-autobiographical, I think she shows that for that purpose, but that isn't necessarily something you have to keep doing.
Thank you for addressing that.
I appreciate you addressing that. I think what I come back to is sort of the challenge and the three categories, you know, appropriateness for this, the three areas of appropriateness. And I'm not sure that the personal life of the author like fits into those three categories as like a decision point. So that's kind of where my head is at on that. I can't really speak on any of the stuff outside of the book, you know, that we're looking at. Is my view.
Thank you, Alex.
I have one last point that I would make. I think where we run into, I'm looking at both of these challenges, and I think where we run into, or where I see an issue with the challenges, is neither one of them read the book. And what problem this causes will be a short example. By not reading the book, I'm looking at these two. They're concerned about the masturbation and sexually explicit things and foul language. Neither one of them reference nigger being used, which makes me feel offended, because by not taking the time to get the full context of the book, they never knew what else was in the book. So we don't know what we're really asking for to have banned, because they don't know the whole thing. Which is why I believe it's important for challengers to take the next step, read the whole book, so that you're fully aware of what's in there. Or maybe the other words just don't bother you, and that's not what you're concerned about. But by not taking the time to fully review what the challenge is, we could possibly be offending other people by not seeing other things that other people might be offended by and only focusing on one thing, which is why I implore the challengers to please read or listen to the books if you have to. I think it would be quite beneficial. And I would say that was the only thing that I took a little awkward from that there was these points of contentions and the racial stuff wasn't mentioned in contention because there was no thought of reading all the way through it. And by not having that follow through, we face the risk of making matters worse for others around as well. That's the only last thing that I can think of that I have any contention with seeing.
I appreciate you calling that out, Jay Sean.
I saw that a member of the audience raised their hand, and I just want to address that. This is not a meeting where we are allowed to have public commentary. So I'm sorry, but just sorry.
Will we have public comments at the following meeting on the 11th?
No, as we said, and maybe Jay Sean, this is a place where we want to follow up with that. The only people right now that are scheduled to speak before us that night are the two individuals who challenged the instructional material. If we want to have, we have Dakota Young. Laura or Susan, Alex, Susie, Anthony, Daphne, if you can think of anybody else that you would like to be able to hear from on that Monday night, this would be our opportunity to put that name down on the list. It's not going to just be a situation where we just hear from the public. We will have a prescribed list of people. We've decided that they'll each have 3 minutes to speak. So.
And it could be anyone in the community, or does it have to be just parents from?
No, if there's somebody who you would like to hear from, then it doesn't have to be a parent or a teacher or anything.
Yeah. Someone that comes to mind, and I'll reach out to her, but Megan Hugh, she's on the public libraries board.
Okay.
And I think works for the public library here in Seaside.
Okay.
I think she'd be a good person
Okay.
to speak up.
Do you, I will get a hold of her if you can give me her contact information. So right now we have Hillary Stock, Brett Bishop, Dakota Young, and potentially Megan Hugh.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be possibly Mark Mazzell.
Mm-hmm.
He might be, I don't know if he's around, but
I'd say also potentially Lori Doherty.
Okay.
Or Mrs. Olsted.
Mm-hmm.
She was my English teacher, and she got me hooked on Lord of the Flies and G-Man Crickets. She's amazing English teacher.
So then now our list looks like Hillary Stock, Brett Bishop, Dakota Young, Megan Hugh, Mr. Mizell, Lori Doherty, and Mrs. Olsted. I will reach out to the list. I'll need maybe contact Jishan. I might need contact information for Dakota Young and Daphne for Megan Hugh.
I will email you Dakota's information tomorrow.
Great,
Or
thank you.
yeah, I'll email it. You'll have it by tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we were scheduled to go. I gave us a 2-hour window tonight, but unless people are feeling like they want to talk more, I feel as if you had a beautiful discussion. You kept to the points of the policy. We've agreed on our next meeting. We've agreed on who we will hear from and how long they will have to speak. And then we'll take the opportunity to vote on, oh, Jane, sorry, go.
Can we add Mary and Rose
Sure, absolutely.
to the list since she's in charge of the youth library section in Seaside?
Mm-hmm.
I think that her view would be important because she has to deal with challenges against a lot of books there and also had more understanding of why a challenge would be there and why she puts books up in the library that could be challenging.
Okay. I'd be happy to, I will add her to the list. Anyway, so then on Monday, we'll hear from those people. And then you will have the opportunity, somebody will make a motion. And your recommendation will be, again, continued use of the material as used with no reservations. Restricted or modified use of the material in terms of subject area, grade level, etc. Or no further use of the material as a part of the regular or support curriculum in the district. And then once a motion has been made, it will be seconded. And then I will do a roll call vote where I will ask Jane, and Jane will say yay or nay. Does that make sense?
So
Do you mind if I just interject for a moment
Thank
about
you, Leslie. Yeah.
just public meetings? So because this follows public meetings law, I just want to mention that it sometimes feels counterintuitive that there should be a motion on the floor prior to discussion.
Okay.
So if you don't have a motion on the floor, you don't actually know what you're discussing yet.
Okay.
Just know that, once you've heard all the testimony, that you're going to be hearing, prior to starting your discussion about which one of those options, you want to choose, there will need to be a motion on the floor. So then you'll know, are you discussing removing the book? Are you discussing not removing the book? Are you discussing somewhere in the middle? So just know that at your next meeting, although it feels counterintuitive, you do need to have a motion on the floor. Then you'll have your discussion. When you're done with your discussion and you're ready for a vote, then Kate will take a roll call vote.
Thank you for clarifying that, Leslie. And then they'll hear the testimonials first, then make a motion. Is that, then have a discussion, then have a vote? Is that the correct order?
That is the correct order.
Okay, thank you. So
Good.
I'll make sure with Leslie's help that we will have an agenda for that meeting, and I will I'll probably write it tomorrow and email it to you guys before Monday. Again, I really want to thank you for your thoughtful comments, for the time that you put into this, for caring about the kids in our district. I know that you're their parents and teachers, but they are very well cared for and very well loved in this district. And so I thank you for taking the time And to, really think about what we are presenting them with, how we're teaching them, how we're growing them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are
Kate.
there any last questions or comments before I adjourn for tonight?
No, thank you very much, Jane and Brightline and Miss Susie, and you guys are doing fantastic. And Laura.
And Susie.
I
And
did have
Susie.
And
But
I
all
did-
Susies.
I did have a quick question, Kate. Do you want us to bring back the material you provided us to
Yes.
bring back to you on Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the books that I passed out are in fact library books. So please do return them because they're all checked out and I have to return them. So thank you very much for bringing that up, Anthony. All right. Leslie, do I just say this meeting is adjourned?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. I look forward to seeing all of you guys on Monday. As of right now, we're scheduled to be in the library at 6 o'clock. If something changes, I will let you know. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Kyle.
Oh, and if you guys haven't been there, park on the second parking lot for the library, not the district office side.